ABC Kinderteach presents Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, written by Judy Barrett and illustrated by Barrett. Oh, look, is that a rock or is that, oh, that's a meatball, isn't it? And look, he has in his pocket some silverware and a cup and an umbrella and a plate and a bib. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we each could eat. And Grandpa was doing the flipping. They do look like they're arguing, don't they, those two kids? And that must be Grandpa, and that must be Mom. Seconds later, something flew through the air, headed towards the kitchen ceiling, and landed right on Henry. He looks a little bit surprised, doesn't he? After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully, and uneventfully just means without any more surprises. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. Oh, they even ate that one. That night, touched off by the pancake incident, or thing that happened at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale, which is a made-up story that's hard to believe, bedtime story he'd ever told. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. That's funny. Chew and swallow, like you chew your food and swallow it. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. And assorted means different kinds. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. But they didn't need any. The sky supplied, or gave, all the food they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. Ooh, it looks like the dog is looking for dinner too, and he looks like he's waiting for dinner. The cat, not so sure. Whatever the weather served or sent down, that was what they ate. But it never rained rain, it never snowed snow, and it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas. And sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. I don't know if I like this or not. I mean, it'd be nice to have your food given to you every day, but I don't know if I want a hamburger hitting me on the head. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for the next day's food. And it says, there's cloudy and meatballs and maybe some soup. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared or ready for any kind of weather. And look at it. What's happening here, and look what's happening here. Look at, he's got his umbrella upside down. He's drinking with a straw on it, and Spike looks like he's getting his soup or whatever there. Oh, look at she's trying to catch some chicken. Very interesting. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in their refrigerators in case they got hungry between meals. I don't know if I had all that food if I'd get hungry between meals. The menu varied, or the types of food that was sent down. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief, or one that's not lasting very long, shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny side up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast, and most of the time it rained milk afterwards. Milk raining down. I'm not sure if I like that either. I don't know if I want milk to be coming down on my head and getting my clothes all wet. I'm not sure. What about you? For lunch one day, frankfurters, or hot dogs, already in their rolls, blew in from the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. And look at, you can kind of see them coming in. There were mustard clouds nearby, mustard for the hot dogs. Then the wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle, or a light rain, of soda finished off the meal. And look at this guy, he's diving for a hot dog. Dinner one night was made of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times with occasional ketchup. And becoming heavy just means there's raining more food, and occasional ketchup just means every once in a while there's ketchup coming down. Periods of peas and baked potatoes, which means period just means at times, were followed by gradual clearing or slowly stopped raining food, with a wonderful jello setting in the west. The sanitation department, or the people that picked up the garbage, of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all the dogs and cats. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and turtles and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. And that's the sanitation department picking it up with forks and spoons and dumping it into a container. That's the garbage. Life for the townspeople was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worst. And a turn for the worst just means it was fine, but then it became bad. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day long. And that's a cheese that looks like this, and it's really stinky. The next day there was only broccoli, which looks like that, all overcooked, which means it was soggy. And the next day there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. Another day there was a pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got stuck in the fog. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions, or the amount of food raining down. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up suddenly. Awful things were happening. On Tuesday there was a hurricane, like a tornado, of bread and rolls all day long, and into the night there were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds and some without. There was white bread and rye and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. They were just frustrated, just could not believe how they're going to keep up with all the food coming down on them. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds picked at it a bit, but it just stayed there and got staler and staler. There was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight, so they had to close the school. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drifts or piles, blowing into piles, of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomachache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind came at the same time, by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There were seeds and pulp everywhere. Whew, things are getting bad, really bad. You think it's going to get better? Or what's going to happen? The sanitation department gave up. The job was too big. Everyone feared for their lives, which means that they were worried because all the food was coming down on them. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon, or give up and leave, the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. So they're saying, you know what? We just cannot continue to live here. It's just getting too unsafe, too dangerous. The people glued together the giant pieces of stale bread, sandwich style, with peanut butter, took the absolute necessities, the only things that they absolutely needed, with them, and set sail on their rafts for a new land. And look at their boats, look like they're made of the bread with the peanut butter between them, and there may be cheese or the sails. Very interesting. After being afloat for a week, afloat just means floating in the water, they finally reached a small coastal town, a town along the water, which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. So they took the bread that was used for the boats, and they made little houses for themselves. The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in the new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that the food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again. And nobody dared to go back to Chew and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story. I remember his good night kiss. The next morning we woke up to see snow falling outside our window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat, which means a little square, of butter at the top, and we could almost smell mashed potatoes. So it's saying, that looks like mashed potatoes, and that's a little piece of butter, little square of butter. The end.